It's been a long and difficult divorce, but the UK is finally out of the European Union, 3.5 years after voting to leave the EU. I'm Birgit Maas in London.
And I'm Georg Mattes in Brussels. Join us as we re-travel the long and bumpy road to Brexit.
You have reached your destination, Brexit.
Leave or remain, a deceptively simple choice for UK voters, but a choice with complex repercussions. After bitter and divisive campaigns, decision day came on June 23rd, 2016. Polling showed the result would be close, but tipped a narrow win for Remain.
How wrong these polls turn out to be. From our DW studio in Berlin, my colleagues Brent Goff and Christopher Springate anchored our live broadcast of the vote that rocked the EU. Sadly, Christopher has since passed away. This is how we remember him and the historic night.
More than 46 million people in the United Kingdom have been asked a simple question. Do you want your country to remain in the European Union or leave?
In a few hours' time, we'll know the answer.
Remain is leading, but of course, at the moment we still have to take everything with a pinch of salt.
It seemed almost like we had a little sigh of relief from the Commission. I thought I could hear it over here earlier today when those first opinion polls came over.
And I actually can't remember any referendum where there was a yes or no question that will deliver so little clarity about what happens the next day as this one.
Yeah. But I think we've got some results coming in now. Christopher.
Well, that's a victory for the Leave camp. Just over 60% voting to leave the European Union, just under 40% voting to remain. We expected that, but that is the first victory for the Leave camp.
So those two northern cities so far have been much more solid for the Leave camp, than anyone had expected.
We feel that we're on course, but we feel that it is very much on a knife edge.
Let's say we were to be surprised, and if the numbers are wrong, and there is a Brexit.
The Eurosceptic genie is out of the bottle, and it will now not be put back.
I think that many of the populist activists don't care. Now, even if it's a messy Brexit, they don't care.
Just imagine, what if your family were divided on this? Here's one voter saying the EU referendum has split the household so much that my dad is sleeping on the sofa.
We now have 64 voting areas who've declared, and the trend seems to be moving back towards the Remain campaign.
So I'm not quite sure that the people who really said they would go to sleep are or really went to sleep at the moment. This is such a nail-biter.
When we get to the finishing line, whichever side crosses that line first, it'll be by only a very small margin.
You can see up here on the wall, it looks as though the Leave camp is beginning to pull ahead.
So far, what we're seeing is a shock.
It is a shock, yes, and I think what's happened is that David Cameron's completely overshot the mark. He thought, OK, we'll hold this referendum, we'll walk it, it'll be easy, we'll be able to convince Britain to stay in, and it's backfired very badly, and it's now getting frightening, I think.
We're coming up on about 21 minutes after 5 o'clock in the morning. What does Germany and the rest of Europe wake up to?
Well, I guess very soon to a prime minister called Boris Johnson. And then the US president might be Donald Trump, and then you think you're in a nightmare.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day!
The UK broadcasters now, the BBC and ITV, now are both declaring a win for the Leave camp in this referendum. And again, just wanted to repeat that. The BBC is now forecasting the UK has voted to leave the European Union. David Cameron, is he going to wake up and have to resign?
Well, I doubt he went to bed, frankly.
OK, well, that's even worse, resigning and no sleep.
He's been the leader of the Remain campaign, and if Leave wins, well, he has to leave as well.
The uncertainty is continuing to grow, and that is playing out first and foremost on markets.
We've today seen the biggest intraday moves of the pound against the dollar in history. It's quite a historic day, and it's only just started.
How do you see the day developing in Brussels, which, of course, is also waking up to this news?
It's certainly not going to be a calm day here in Brussels either.
I mean, this is a a colossal earthquake. This is a decision that is going to affect everybody in the UK for years and years to come.
A result that most of us, frankly, did not see coming.
The United Kingdom has voted to leave the European Union. That's the outcome of the referendum held on Thursday.
The sudden reality of Brexit was acutely felt in Northern Ireland, where it threatened to unravel the peace process. The prospect of a hard Irish border had many fearing a return to the sectarian strife of the past.
The memories never fade. Memories of the troubles in Northern Ireland. Alfie McCroy witnessed the 1993 Shankill Road bombing, which claimed 10 lives. It was one of the most devastating attacks perpetrated by the IRA in the years of the Northern Ireland conflict.
25 years on, the memory is still in people's mind, the hurt is still there, and the loss of people who have lost loved ones is still there.
A former member of the IRA, Alex Maskey, is an honorary speaker at this memorial event for fallen IRA fighters.
Obviously,
he has turned his back on the IRA, a politician who belongs to Sinn Féin, a party dedicated to the reunification of Ireland. He supports peace-building work and flat-out rejects the prospect of an Irish border as a result of Brexit.
We see it as an attack on the peace process. We certainly see it as the prospect of undermining the peace process, and it has made the business of trying to re-establish our institutions here all the more difficult. So people here are very angry about Brexit, and they will not take a Brexit sitting on their hands.
A hard border is a red flag for many here.
Good Friday Agreement needs to be honoured and respected. That took away the hard border, so it did. And people felt as if they were part of Ireland, part of all Ireland. You take that away from us, and then things can, every generation for all the years has been back to conflict, and that can't happen again.
Alfie McCroy and his Protestant friends want to remain in the United Kingdom and don't want the special status for Northern Ireland that the EU is backing. McCroy desperately hopes that Northern Irish peace will not be undermined by Brexit. For now, it seems all too likely that conflict will return to the region.
At the height of the so-called Troubles, the Irish border was dotted with roadblocks, watchtowers and checkpoints. Today, it's an all but invisible frontier, and people on both sides can cross it freely. We met one of many people who wanted to stay that way. She takes the freedom of movement in the EU literally. Alex Stanek, a fine art graduate from Northern Ireland, has run the length of the Irish border 360 kilometers in 7 days.
For me as an artist and as a runner and as a young person, there's something to be said for the fact that I could do this, and over the course of a week I can go on this crazy run, you know, it's some kind of crazy travel, but I'm free to enter and exit different countries.
Alex Stanek is originally from Poland and has been living in Northern Ireland since she was 11. Her aim is to highlight the invisible border separating Northern Ireland in the UK and the Republic of Ireland. Her partner hopes that a return of border checkpoints can be avoided.
The way in which the border runs means there's divisions halfway through a road or through a field. It's not a traditional border in terms of rivers and things like that. It makes it extremely difficult if a hard border was to come into place.
On her run, Alex has been crossing the border numerous times and without any difficulty. It's a completely open border.
And mostly there are not even signs that tell you that you're crossing an actual border from the Republic of Ireland over here to Northern Ireland in the UK. Northern Ireland voted against Brexit with 56% of the population in opposition. Alex now hopes that more people will follow her footsteps and make their voices heard.
We want to know more about Northern Ireland. I'm joined by Quentin Peel, Senior Fellow at the think tank Chatham House on European Affairs. Thanks for coming, Quentin. So, Northern Ireland was a major roadblock for Theresa May and her withdrawal agreement. Is it all solved now under Boris Johnson?
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it's solved at all. It's been fudged. The big change is that Boris Johnson has agreed, in effect, to have some sort of border in the middle of the Irish Sea. That infuriated the Northern Irish Unionists, and really he lost their votes, but he no longer needs their votes, so he's pushed it through. The trouble is, I think, that it's not just the Unionists in Northern Ireland who mistrust the whole deal, it's also on the other side of the Channel. I was talking to somebody from Paris yesterday, and they were saying, well, we're not at all sure that the Brits won't try and smuggle stuff into the European Union through Northern Ireland. We're going to check everything that comes from that island.
And some say actually it's an opportunity for Northern Ireland, that it gets effectively the best of both worlds. What do you say to that?
Well, it was always the case that if Northern Ireland could remain both inside the European single market and inside the UK single market, it would be a fantastic opportunity. And that may well be so. I think the danger is that actually this whole fudge has reignited the debate in Northern Ireland about Irish unification. And that's the destabilising factor. This is not just about economics. This is about the political world. And if there is a big surge now in anti-Brexit feeling on the nationalist side in Northern Ireland, and not a lot of support for Brexit on the unionist side, we may see Northern Ireland coming to have some sort of referendum or decision on reunification of Ireland.
And some people might be prepared to actually fight for that. Do you see that it would reignite maybe any sectarian strife in Northern Ireland?
Nobody wants to go back to the ghastliness of the 30 years of terrorism that we saw in Northern Ireland. At least no ordinary people want to. There is a small minority that might. But I think the danger of this whole process is that those people who pushed Brexit through never thought through the consequences. And it's not just Northern Ireland, it's also Scotland too. Might the Scots vote for Scottish independence? I think that the coherence of the entire United Kingdom is called into question by this Brexit process.
Quentin Peel, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
One of the main battles for Brexit was fought offshore. EU fishing quotas have long been a sore point in the UK, with leavers vowing to take back control of Britain's waters. So, has the fishing industry on both sides been left at sea?
For hundreds of years, Paul Joy's family has set out on the North Sea to catch fish. They're one of the few remaining families of fishermen in Hastings, southern England.
My brother is fishing and cousins are fishing, but for my family, this looks like the last generation. Simply, it's just not viable for them to fish.
But that's not because of depleted North Sea fish stocks. In fact, stocks have recovered, says Joy. Instead, the problem is that British fishermen face a limit on how much fish they're allowed to catch.
We're fishing in British waters, which was British territorial waters, and have to throw back fish because our counterparts, European fishermen, they do not have to throw back.
That's why nearly all British fishermen voted for Brexit. They want to regain control over their own waters and decide how much to fish. They also want to banish other European fishermen from British waters, like this Dutch vessel. Dutch captain Guido Betsema spends 80% of the year fishing exclusively in British parts of the North Sea.
If I can no longer fish there, I'll have to find other areas. I'd have to compete with my Dutch colleagues and share a tiny fishing area.
Brexit puts about 50% of the Dutch fishing fleet in peril, says Pim Visser, who represents the Dutch fishing industry. He thinks this is unnecessary because strict EU regulations now ensure there's enough fish for all. Visser thinks the British government is a real problem for distributing only a tiny fraction of its EU fishing quota to British small-scale fishermen in the English Channel.
They blame the EU for the internal problems. The smaller boats have no quota. That is a problem, but that's not a problem created by Brussels, that's a problem created by London.
After 8 hours at sea, Paul Joy's small fishing boat returns to Hastings. Once back on land, the day's entire catch is sold. to Europe, of all places. And that's a problem. Britain's fishermen export the fish they've caught and import their favourite fish, cod, which is a classic main ingredient in fish and chips. But Joy's worried that the price for free trade in fish would be high. Europe is likely to demand precisely what he and other Brexiteers wanted: control over British waters.
As a full member of the EU single market, Britain enjoyed the free movement of goods to and from Europe. But with Brexit came the ominous warnings, predictions of long delays at ports, and even shortages of food and medicine that had some people preparing for a customs gridlock.
Michael Kirschning, who moved to Britain from Germany, takes advantage of every sale and special offer he can find. He lives in Milton Keynes, northwest of London, and he's afraid price rises and shortages will be rampant post-Brexit. Kirschning is a prepper, someone who prepares.
People who've got money don't care. They can afford everything. You can always get anything for money. But the rest of us will suffer.
Preppers are afraid nothing will work properly, including customs processing at the port of Dover, the island's busiest harbour.
Currently, it takes a minute and a half to get a lorry through. But once Britain's out of the EU, it'll take about 4 minutes. They're projecting 5-mile tailbacks within 24 hours. And within the first week, the traffic jam will reach London.
At the weekly market in Milton Keynes, Michael Kirschning expects there will be less products on offer. But he seems to be one of the few people here who worry about it.
People will be foolish and they will start stockpiling, and that may cause a problem. But I think it's something that's unnecessary.
I think we've got to get on and do it now. We've got to claim back our sovereignty. We can't be ruled by Brussels anymore.
Michael Kirschning isn't leaving anything up to chance.
What I've got on my shelves here ought to last 2 months. I've got enough in my freezer to get me through another 3 months, so that's no problem.
Michael Kirschning thinks anyone who isn't taking precautions is naive. He's even got a plan B worked out. If the worst comes to the worst, he can always return to Germany after almost 30 years in Britain.
Now, for more on the future relationship between the UK and the European Union, I'm joined by a leading expert when it comes to Brexit, member of the European Parliament, Danuta Hübner, and member of the so-called Brexit steering group. Ms. Hübner, where do you think are the greatest challenges in forming this new relationship?
First of all, it's the most important thing is the future. And then I think it's absolutely clear today that we see that that UK will just stay there, the most important partner for the closest for the European Union. So we will have to have a good economic partnership where FTA will be the basis and where so-called level playing field, which is all the measures which ensure for all of us that the competition is on equal footing. This will be, I think, the most challenging, the most important. And the second issue will be security, both internal and external.
Are there concessions where you would say the EU should not make in these negotiations for a free trade agreement?
I think these negotiations are not at all about concessions. It's about really finding the proper balance between the rights and obligations, and we are very clear. UK also knows how European Union functions. UK also knows that to enter the market to which they now export more than 44% of their exports comes here. They know that they have to respect also norms and standards, all the rules which are typical for the European single market.
So you're optimistic that there will be a close relationship?
I think we shouldn't have other choice. I think for both for UK it's an important issue, and for us it's an important issue. So I still hope that this will be an unprecedented close relationship based on a good free trade agreement. Unfortunately, we also know that the British Prime Minister would like to reduce it to the so-called bare-bone free trade agreement. We don't have much time. We just will have 8 months for the negotiations. So it's going to be extremely challenging, extremely difficult. But we really should understand that it's important for our businesses, for our citizens.
Now, you're a member of parliament from Poland, and Poland has vested interests in a close relationship. Other member states less so. How concerned are you about the unity of the EU in those negotiations?
You know, I would disagree with you because I think economic interests are much stronger here in this part of Europe, for France, for Germany, even for Benelux countries, the markets, the car industry, for example. For Poland, what matters is citizens, situation for citizens, but also, for example, fishery. We don't fish, we don't catch in the British waters, but we have the capacity to process all the fish which is being caught in the British waters. So we are interested as well. Everybody, I think all member states, some more, some less. For us, the relations matters in different areas. So I hope that the unity of member states will be kept for these very difficult, challenging negotiations.
Ms. Hübner, thank you very much.
EU citizens are free to live anywhere they want in the bloc, and more than 3 million non-Brits have decided to settle in the United Kingdom. The Brexit vote produced a collective gulp over their future in the country and their rights. We spoke to Polish nationals about their concerns.
Na koniec kolejki u nas pada, tak? Rzeczy bieżące, po to, żeby teraz jak najwięcej dać. For us and as well, the idea of the European Union was that you can move from one city to another that will be from country to country, like you're moving in just your country internally. And suddenly someone telling, sorry, we don't like you, you have to go back. My name is Szymon Jestrijewski. I came to UK in 2006 and I do run an accountancy firm company in Midlands. After the Brexit, well, on the first week, we lost many clients because they actually panicked. They closed down the company, came back to Poland. They feel not very welcome. They feel unsafe as a business.
A jeżeli pan ma tak, this is not fair. Why we should to go back? If I'm already here 11 years, I've been paying for all the time my tax in here. Why I cannot stay here?
A lot of the guys are saying that they still feel that there's this underlying current of animosity and they no longer feel that they have a future here.
A British government can always end up and say, okay, we've got a 3 million European Union citizen at the minute in UK. If you do not accept something like that, we can kick them out. And yeah, we feel like a bargaining chip for the negotiation. It's not a nice feeling. It's not a nice feeling.
It wasn't a nice feeling either for expat Brits living in Europe. In Germany, the uncertainty triggered a flood of applications for German citizenship in a race to beat the Brexit deadline.
Elizabeth Wood is back to her school-time studying habits. A British national, she's learning about the German constitution for her upcoming German citizenship test. She's determined to keep the EU rights that allowed her to move to Berlin on a whim 8 years ago.
I'm just trying to do all I can should the worst happen. So I'm trying to apply for a German passport as well as hoping to keep my British passport.
Elizabeth Wood is one of over 100,000 Brits living in Germany. They now face a 3-month waiting list if they want to apply for German citizenship here. If applicants meet the requirements, at the moment they can still get a German passport and keep their British one. But when Britain leaves the EU, things could get more complicated. They may have to give up one to get the other. In these uncertain times, Britons abroad can find comfort at broken English. Dale Carr opened the Berlin food and gift store over 20 years ago, and she has all the British favorites. Now, after 38 years of living in Berlin, Britain's decision to leave the EU has pushed Dale Carr to apply for German citizenship.
And I feel so sorry that people like me who could, say, drink these 2 lager and blackcurrants in a pub in Leicester and make a decision to just go to Berlin, why not? And that's not going to be like that anymore. And that's a shame.
But not every Brit has been in Germany long enough to apply for citizenship and gain peace of mind. For them, the advice is clear.
So they were just some of the stops on the road to Brexit. But of course, the journey carries on.
So as Brussels and London begin to forge a new relationship to the UK, we say auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, see you later, but definitely not goodbye.